Welcome to Beebe Flicks. We're your Beebe librarians here to give you what we've been watching this week. I'm Bridget from the Reference Department, and today I'm joined by Jeff from the Reference Department and Alyssa, also from the Reference Department. All right, so I'm going to start, and what I've been watching this week is actually a new show, and I have not finished it because it isn't done yet. It's still airing on television. Is Mrs. America on Hulu.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Tell me about this.
Yeah. So, Mrs. America stars Cate Blanchett as Phyllis Schlafly, famous anti-feminist and anti-ERA crusader. And she's sort of the spine of the story, but it really goes through the women's movement broadly and has a great cast filled with people who you recognize playing people who you would know their names. Rose Byrne plays Gloria Steinem. Uzu Adubo from Orange is the New Black plays Shirley Chisholm, and character actress Margot Martindale plays Bella Abzug, the New York congresswoman. And Elizabeth Banks is there, and Ari Grainer, if you know, she's a great younger actress. And so it's just like a really great cast, and it's interesting, and they're sort of going through the entire 70s around the ERA fight, but also really examining the women's movement of the time and what kind of fractures existed in that movement as well. And ultimately, obviously don't know the ending, but we know from history that the ERA wasn't passed, it wasn't ratified, even though when they started it, it seemed like a slam dunk. To get.
How many episodes are there?
I believe so. There have been 4 episodes there are 5 episodes that have aired. I forgot this week. So there's 5 episodes that have aired. They aired the first 3 all at once. They premiered the first 3, and then the next ones come out week by week. And so there's 5 that exist, and I think there are 8, but I am not positive on that. It is a limited series, so it will end after this. It's just this. They're not going to be like Mrs. America, the 80s, in the future. But I really liked it. I think it's like the recreation of the time. It's very interesting. The way that they're very precise about clothing and costuming and attitudes, and obviously some of them look like, I would say that Gloria Steinem is very famous. We know what Gloria Steinem looked like in the 70s. And I think Rose Byrne does an amazing job of looking like Gloria Steinem. Mm-hmm. And she's also a very it's also a very good performance. She's excellent. I forgot Tracy Ullman is Betty Friedan. Mm-hmm. So kind of it's like a very sort of eclectic group of actresses, and they're all doing top-notch work. It's incredible.
Cate Blanchett is getting really good reviews.
Yeah, and I think it really deserves it. And Cate Blanchett has a quality she's an excellent icy patrician woman. So that's who she's playing here. So she does that really well. And I think that there's kind of been sort of how much is it humanizing Phyllis Schlafly, I think people are saying, and I really don't think that it does that. I would not be worried if you're oh no, it's going to make me think she's just frustrated, and it's not that. And this is a little spoiler, I'm going to give a little spoiler for a line of dialogue that I really like, is there's a part where she talks with her husband about how she could have gone to Harvard Law School. And he says, well, you couldn't have. They didn't start admitting women until 4 years after she was in grad school, when her grad school advisor had told her to apply to Harvard. And what she says is not oh, well, we would have changed it. What she says is, they would have made an exception for me, which I think is the absolute anti-feminist motto, right? Is they would make an exception for me. I am special, but there's no care for anyone else. So I really liked it, and I thought that the show was very smart about what it's saying here.
No, I'll put that on my list. I would watch Cate Blanchett reading, the classified ads. So.
Yeah, she's great. I think, and that's the thing, is she is you get, I don't know, I love Cate Blanchett, but she's so loathsome here. She doesn't, there's no oh, actually she was a great person. It's no, she's bad. But in a nuanced way, not a cartoon villain way, but not secretly her secret heart was broken. It was just like, no, she was just a bad person, did bad things. So I'm sorry if it got a little political there, got a little spicy there. Alyssa, I think you said you wanted to go next.
Yeah, my show that I've been watching is my favorite show right now. It's in its 4th season. It's The Good Fight, which is a spin-off of The Good Wife, which was on CBS, and The Good Fight is on CBS All Access. It is the reason I signed up for CBS All Access. And you don't necessarily have to watch The Good Wife to enjoy this, but you'll enjoy it that much more because like the Good Wife, it's a character show. Like it's set in a defense law firm, then there's lawyers, there's judges, and they just bring everyone back. Every single bit character is fully developed, lots of personality, and even the process server is the same process server from The Good Wife. And it's a very funny show, and especially considering it's technically it's very dramatic. It has, and it's, Bridget, you called it zany. It's a bit like it's about the law, but it's also just what you can do with the law, like the ridiculousness of the law. Each season has a sort of arc, and in the first season, it was sort of boring. It was, in my opinion, it was more about her she was going to retire, and then there was a Ponzi scheme, and so she had to start up at a new African-American law firm and start over. But in the second season, they had their arc was a kill all the lawyers arc, where everyone was supposedly killing lawyers. The third season was a Diane. So The Good Fight starts off with Diane Lockhart, who was in the Good Wife, and it's her journey. And so she joins in the third season, a plot to overtake Trump by any means short of assassination, pretty much. And then she joins a covert group. And this season, it's about the rich and powerful not have to comply with subpoenas. So they're focusing more on the law, but they're still taking a little bit of politics as well. It's a pretty political show. The first episode opens with her in the duration drinking alone.
Is it kind of like LA Law used to be? Is it a little like LA Law? That sort of like, it's a legal drama, but there's a comedy to it.
Yeah, it's like a lot of those workplace dramas that have, their characters, there's backstories and their lives, but there still is that legal element to the main arc of the show.
Yeah, the Kings they're a married couple who created The Good Wife and then create the Good Fight, are probably some of the most interesting like showrunners who work they really work like exclusively on network television. Like because they made The Good Wife, and obviously The Good Fight is on CBS All Access, but it's still like in sort of the CBS brand. And they had a show on CBS this past year called Evil, which you can also see on CBS All Access.
That before, yeah.
Which I mentioned before because it's hands down one of the. It's so funny, and it's like kind of an X-Files-esque procedural where they're investigating like the supernatural, but also one time our main characters get dosed on acid and hallucinate the birth of a demon baby. Like that also happens in it, but like maybe that did happen for real, we don't know. And a different character, we see him talking to his therapist, and his therapist is Satan.
The Kings also, in between The Good Wife and The Good Fight, they did a little mini series that was about the government, but it was also about aliens. I don't know if you watched. Did you watch that?
Yeah, Brain Dead. It was about ants that take over your brain and make you, in this, it like polarized people politically. So it was like, I think people make jokes about like the brain worms that infect you sometimes, and that's what this show is about.
Literally.
Literally.
And they were triggered by the Cars, right? That song, like one particular 80s song.
Yes, there was one 80s song that set them off.
That's their flavor.
Lots of ads for that show because we got CBS All Access too in the middle of all this, and so we're seeing constant ads for The Good Fight.
Yeah. So, Jeff, what have you been watching?
It's weird. I've kind of been watching a mix of, it's almost like cleanup, catch up stuff, like finishing off things that, so I'm almost at the point where I'm looking for new things to start because I've finished a couple things. We actually, the Good Fight makes me think because we keep seeing the advertisements on CBS with Christine Baranski in it. We finally finished The Big Bang Theory, which we were behind on. And that's just like perfect pandemic escapism, like back when life was normal. And we had one season left to go. So that was fun to be able to sort of, I really liked how they wrapped it up. I won't say any details for anybody who hasn't watched it yet, but I thought they did a really good and charming job of kind of wrapping up the story in a way that felt satisfying. So we did that. And the reason that's in my head is because Christine Baranski is one of the guest stars on that. She plays Leonard's insane therapist mother. Talk about Satan as your therapist. And the reason that we got CBS All Access, got the free trial, is to watch Star Trek Picard, which we also finished. It was very good. And to catch up on Star Trek Discovery. For some reason, I like, it's funny, I don't read a lot of science fiction, but I watch a lot of science fiction. And I've never been quite sure why that is, but we watched the first season of Star Trek Discovery on DVD from the library, all places. And so now we're halfway through the second season on CBS All Access, and it's really good. If you're into the Star Trek universe, it goes way back. It's very early on. You're learning backstory about some of the characters, but the effects are current, top-notch stuff. So there's always that kind of weird juxtaposition of going back to the earliest parts of that universe, but without plastic headdresses and fake computer buttons. And it's much more character driven, I think, than some of the others. I don't know if either of you have watched any of them, but there's one character who has got to be, I think, my favorite character of any Star Trek character in any of the series. She's delightful. And she reminds me actually of Olivia, one of our coworkers.
I know who you mean.
You know who I mean?
Yeah, on the show, yeah.
She's funny, but she's bright, but she's real. And it's just kind of interesting to see Star Trek do, they swear on this version of the show because it's on cable, and it's a little bit different from some of the other series that they've done. And this character, I just think, is so normal and real, instead of an archetype or I think what they're doing with her is delightful. She was kind of geeky in school, but she finds herself, and she's hysterically funny, but at the same time, she's really well developed as a genuine person. So we've been really loving that. We're about halfway through that. And I think I mentioned the last time we did this show, I mentioned a Spanish series on Netflix called Elite. And I finished that, and I'm horribly disappointed because I loved it. And now there's no more. In theory, there might be a fourth season. There were 3 seasons, each of which has, I think, 8 episodes. So it's not really long. But boy, what an amazing show. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. It was really gripping and really, really good characters. For me, character is like one of the most important things. Whether I'm reading or I'm watching something, I have to feel like the characters are really lifelike and believable. And this was one of those shows where the ensemble is so good, particularly since they're all really young actors and they're all Spanish, so you don't know any of them. They're not recognized faces. And they all develop in such interesting ways that they start out as, like, in the first couple of episodes, they're very cardboard cutout, like the spoiled rich kid, the poor immigrant kid, you know, and then as it develops, they all become so fascinating, and you learn their backgrounds and the depth and what motivates them and stuff. And it's really good. And it's also one of those shows where they don't pull any punches, so you get very attached to certain characters, and then things happen. So just because someone's one of the major players does not mean that something couldn't happen to them. And that's, I think that really makes it a great show. And although it really is basically like a high school soap opera, they deal with so many issues. There's cancer, there's HIV, there's immigration, there's class issues, there's corruption, political stuff, there's the justice system in Spain. And like, I thought they did an amazing job. And the fact that it's got, you know, sex and revenge and all the stuff that you want in a good soap opera, I thought they blended those two sides of things really, really well. So I hear there's going to be a 4th season, and I think the way they left the end of season 3, they wrapped it up nicely. So if it never goes anywhere else, you're okay with that. But they also left it open that things could continue if it gets renewed. It's kind of interesting because from what I understand, Netflix has opened a studio in or near Madrid. So they're starting to do, I'm forgetting what the other one was that came out of the same place, but there was an earlier series last year in Spanish language. So I guess Netflix is trying to start original programming that comes from Spain.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense because there is obviously the Spanish people speak in Spain is different from the Spanish people speak in other parts of the world, but it's still such a huge market. And I mean, think of Spanish language television in the United States was always secretly a huge market that mainstream America didn't interact with. But Univision was regularly very highly rated, and even like when I was in college, we would watch telenovelas because we didn't have cable, but Univision came in much better on the like the antennas that we use, because that was their audience. They had stronger antennas than the like main broadcast network, so we couldn't get those channels. So we would watch telenovelas, which we did not really understand. My one friend did speak Spanish, so she understood and would tell us if something was important, but we mostly followed along because
did you pick up any Spanish from that? A little bit?
I don't think so. I don't think I picked up any Spanish from it. You can I picked up the way tones of voices means things that are dramatic or things that are funny. Does that count in any way?
Yeah.
But so it makes sense that Netflix would heavily expand into that as they are trying to be like a worldwide company. And I know the show Babylon Berlin, which is in German, is a German co-production between Netflix and Germany. It was like the highest budgeted show in German history because Netflix paid for half of it.
Yeah, Netflix has had several. There was a good sci-fi German show called Dark that was really good, and they've had a couple of French series and there was a Dutch series. So there's been several from different countries in Europe, and I don't. It must be a great market for them, and for people who don't mind watching subtitles, it's really interesting programming. And I sometimes like programming that doesn't have all the usual suspects in it, the actors you're used to seeing. because you can get focused on the actor instead of the role. So it's kind of nice to watch something where you don't know any of the people. They're all completely new to you.
And it still gives you a real sense of surprise. That's one of the things, like if I'm watching a movie and it stars Tom Cruise and I'm trying to think of like someone else who's very famous, and then like someone I've never heard of, and it's like, oh no, one of the three of these people is gonna die. It's like, well, it's not gonna be Tom Cruise. Like he's the star of this film, and it's not gonna be the other person because they're like the grizzled character actor. They have to stick around. It's gonna be this young person I've never heard of. They're going to die. Like that's who it is.
Or if you're watching like a police procedural and then like some random character is like, oh, I know who that is. Oh, of course they're the person that committed the murder.
Yeah, like if you're watching SVU and like Law and Order SVU, for instance, and you see in the name like, oh, Kyle MacLachlan is in this episode. And it's like, well, I wonder who Kyle MacLachlan could be in this episode of Law and Order SVU. Could he be the killer? Then it's like, oh, he is. Especially when you don't see them for a long time in the episode and you're like, so there's a really famous person in this episode and they haven't shown up yet. I bet that they're the killer. But you don't have that when you watch foreign television. And it's like, I'm sure for the people in the original market, they had that same experience, but I don't know who these people are. So I watch Asian television, like there's a lot of Korean dramas and
me too.
Dramas on Netflix. And it's the same thing. And then they also actually have expanded to a lot of like Chinese dramas as well, as there's more.
Speaking of Netflix, just out of curiosity, have either of you watched that new show called Hollywood? That's been getting a lot of press. They're kind of recreating Hollywood in the 50s.
I have not.
I was thinking of you, Bridget, because you book talked a very interesting book earlier in the year about some of the famous directors during and after the war. And I think this is supposed to be kind of about that time period and what Hollywood was like. And it stars some pretty big people. The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Jim Parsons from Big Bang.
And Patti LuPone is there.
Oh, that's right, Patti LuPone.
It is a Ryan Murphy production. It's, I guess, officially the first one that he made only for Netflix. Like it was developed at Netflix. I know he had a previous show, but apparently it was developed before the Netflix deal. But this is what he made, like now that he's at Netflix all the time. And I haven't watched it. I have thought about it. I will admit, since I talked it on this first episode, I've just been going through Lost, and I haven't been able to watch another television show until I finish Lost. So that's what's been happening.
And despite the pandemic, there are still only 24 hours in a day.
Exactly. Like I still have things to do, and I have other times when I have to do things. Like earlier this week, my friends and I watched the Swedish movie Force Majeure.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah, which was very good. And by watched together, I mean, we all turned it on at the same time. We texted. But yes, we'll never make you think of Vivaldi's Summer will be a different piece of music for you after if you watch this film. I believe it's on Canopy. It's also on Hulu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good. I watched a bad horror movie. I shouldn't say bad. Because there were parts of it that I liked, and I only watched it for one reason. It's called Gretel and Hansel, and it came out this spring, and it's sort of a reimagining of the fairy tale for a modern audience and stuff. I mainly only watched it because one of my favorite actresses is in it, Alice Krige, who has been in a bunch of things over the years, and she's probably, it's not her best role, but the thing I think she's most famous for being in is she played the Borg Queen in one of the Star Trek movies. And she often does these sort of weird, quirky basically horror films. And she plays the witch, and I kind of watched it only for her. I thought it was visually beautiful. Beyond that, it's like, it was okay. But it reminded me of some other things that I had seen in years past. So what I ended up doing is, because this is what you do during a pandemic, is you go online and buy things on your phone. I had forgotten that one of the things that I watched this actress in years ago and loved was a sci-fi series called Children of Dune, which was a sort of follow-up series to the original Dune that was such a big deal. And I think it came out in the early 90s. And I thought, oh, I'd love to see that again. Now there's all this streaming stuff. It's got to be out there. And of course, it's not. I scoured everywhere and I ended up having to buy a DVD set from Amazon, and it's coming next week. And it was it was a mini series. I forget how many episodes, not very long, like maybe 4 or 5, 6 episodes. But Susan Sarandon was in it also. So Alice Krige, Susan Sarandon, and there were a few other people who were fairly well known at the time. And they're all wearing amazing, sci-fi headdresses and interesting costumes and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to re-enjoying that because I've totally forgotten all the details. It was so long ago.
Where are my Dune heads at?
Yeah.
I'm actually started rereading the book Dune in anticipation of the new film adaptation from Denis Villeneuve, starring Timothée Chalamet. I'm going to do all my bad French pronunciations right here. And which I had read Dune years ago. Obviously, as a teen, you imprint on fear is the mind killer. I must not fear. But I realized that I don't actually remember it.
Yeah.
And I had rewatched the David Lynch Dune recently, which did not help because none of this is in the movie. So
I just remember. Now, who was it that wasn't Kyle MacLachlan in that?
Kyle MacLachlan is he is Paul Atreides.
Yes, that's right. And he's like 24 or something. And
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I feel like we're in a Dune moment. Dune hive, activate.
Yeah. And I don't know, I sci-fi is just, it's perfect for these times because you can't get more escapism than some other planet, please. Like any planet besides this one.
Or even a future of, in Star Trek where it's like a future of our world where it's like eventually we're all going to be fine. Look, we're
things
traveling.
Get better.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you can, not only can you travel, but you can do it in seconds just by beaming to another place. And yeah.
If you need to be quarantined, they just like put you in a room for a little while. It's fine. You're good. They just put a spray in you. You're all good.
They just wave, like, they wave a little thing that goes woo, 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 and they can immediately diagnose you and cure you. And if you want something to eat or drink, you just go talk to your wall and it appears and there you are. You don't need toilet paper. You just talk to the wall and say, toilet paper, double roll.
Also, we never see a toilet, so.
Well, Star Trek The Next Generation had bathrooms. They never showed the toilet part, but they did have.
They just take baths in there?
Well, I think they always showed people in front of the mirror, getting ready for work, before they went to the bridge or something like that. But they never actually showed the other parts of the bathroom, but it was implied that it was at least there.
That it has the whole bathroom. How else would Riker have such a magnificent beard? He has to do his ablutions. He has to make it nice. Well, on that note, I think we've covered it all, right?
We've covered it all, and we have just about run out of time, so that's
These are going to be a document of your Beebe librarians going crazy. But we're so glad you joined us today. You know what? If you're watching anything great, let us know at email at wakefieldlibrary.org, or if there's anything you'd like us to talk about, sound off in the comments. Well, we're here.
Okay, great. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.